welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of South Carolina.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores!
Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks.
Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for August the 9th, 2023, episode number 1273. And in just a few minutes, we will be joined by my special guest today on the show, the hardest working man at Gamecock Central, and that is Collyn Taylor. He does it all. So before we bring in Collyn, let's get to our Nana's Porch news, notes, and headlines brought to you by Nana's Porch, an award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte area. Okay, whatever your catering needs are, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, maybe you want to bring in a food trailer, or maybe it's just a big backyard bash with the whole hog barbecue. Nana's Porch has got you covered and voted top 3 among all food trailers in the Charlotte area by a local newspaper poll. And as we all know, their pimento cheese voted number 1 in the meat and cheese category by the North Carolina Specialty Foods Association. Go to nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. Get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne and support this Gamecock-owned and operated business. And they also sponsoring the Nana's Porch chat box. So jump in, get your comments ready, questions for Collyn Taylor. Joseph is already in the chat box. And so here we go with the headlines. All right, and so kind of an editorial off the top today. So last week, we were celebrating because the Gamecocks just landed a commitment a week ago yesterday from 5-star defensive end Dylan Stewart out of Washington, D.C., beating Ohio State. Steve Wiltfong, the national director of recruiting and evaluation at 24/7 Sports, said there will not be a bigger win in this recruiting cycle than South Carolina landing Dylan Stewart. Why? Not just because they beat the Ohio State University and Georgia, who's just won 2 national championships, and Miami, who their NIL program has, outside of Texas A&M, been second to none, although that may be coming to an end as their main guy could be facing a lot of financial charges, it appears. But because every college staff Steve Wiltfong spoke to said Dylan Stewart is the premier edge rusher in this class. And so outside of quarterback, that is the most important position. I would say, you could get into the chicken and the egg debate. Would you have gotten him without already pulling Nicholas Harbor? Well, maybe not. But my bet would be a year from now, Dylan Stewart makes more of an immediate impact than Nicholas Harbor will. Although I do have high expectations for him, he's just going to be playing behind a veteran group of playmakers. So things are never as great as they seem. Lou Holtz. Friday, Jonathan Paylor picks NC State. Saturday, everybody's expecting the Gamecocks to get Jalewis Solomon, the 4-star, but some 3-star corner out of Schley County or Georgia. And he picks Auburn. It's kind of a gut punch. And so now everybody's dejected. All right, well, so things are also never as bad as they seem. Because when in your lifetime, on August the 9th of a recruiting cycle, has South Carolina had a 5-star recruit? Never. And 11 other guys in their recruiting class that are ranked 4 stars by at least one recruiting service. Okay, I'm talking about the top 2 offensive tackles in the country in Cam Pringle and Josiah Thompson. I'm talking about Michael Smith, one of the top 5 tight ends in the country from Savannah. Wendell Gregory, a big-time linebacker out of Marietta, Georgia. Mazio Bennett out of Greenville. Dante Reno, who's been committed since June 15th of 2022. Okay. Kelvin Hunter, Braden Lee, Fred Johnson, a 3-star guy when he committed, now rated the number 134 player in the country by 24/7 Sports. Zamarian Lang, who's a 4-star wide receiver, according to Rivals. Matthew Fuller, 4-star running back, according to On3 and ESPN, out of Wayne County High School, coached by Connor Shaw's brother, Jabo Shaw. Blake Franks out of Greenville, who's ranked 4 stars by Rivals. And then you have Mason Love, the number 1 punter in the country, will be in the Under Armour All-America game. And so you have one player in your class outside of the number 1 punter, which they never rank kickers as 4 stars. And that's David Busey out of Savannah, who may have some of the most impressive film defensively that I've seen. And so there's no need to be dejected. In recruiting, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. When you're in big boy recruiting battles, you're going to lose some. You're going to win some. Okay, like the Gamecocks have done, but it's a long time till National Signing Day. And so I just wanted to say that. That probably throws us behind, but hey, everybody needs to hear that. All right, so here, more good news. There's only 3 more Saturdays without Gamecock football and only 2 more Saturdays without college football, as on August the 26th, week 0, Gamecocks open Week 1, September the 2nd, College Game Day will be on the scene in Charlotte. Gamecocks will kick off shortly after 7:30 against that other Carolina in the baby blue uniforms. On ABC, Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Fowler calling the game. Hey, the last time those guys called a game, it turned out pretty good for South Carolina. That was against Tennessee. But not only that, is at 2:30, okay, will be the Carolina Rise tailgate, which will be catered by Nana's Porch. Okay, 2:30 to 6:30. In the shadow of Bank of America Stadium, okay, 601 South Cedar Street, Lot D. It's a 0.4 of a mile walk into Bank of America Stadium. Tickets, only $10. What comes with that? A catered meal from Nana's Porch. Water, tea, and colas will be there, as well as cold beer while it lasts, mixed cocktails while they last. You can bring your own cooler. There'll be TVs to watch the games. There'll be raffles and giveaways and special guests. And in addition, everyone will receive a rally towel. Okay. And so go to carolinarise.com, get your tickets while they last. There's also going to be potentially some iconic special guests. And if you don't attend this tailgate, you will regret it. All right, Gamecocks have today off on the gridiron after practicing yesterday. You heard from offensive players. I think tomorrow will be the first day in full pads. They'll practice on Friday, and then Saturday afternoon will be the first scrimmage. Generally, that's a lot of young players. Shane Beamer will meet with the media after the scrimmage. Men's basketball, we'll get into this with Collyn as well. Fresh off a very successful trip to the Bahamas. And look, they did not play the Lithuanian national team. They did not play the national team from Argentina. But they played teams from those two countries, and they had two convincing wins, and they really shot the three ball extremely well, over 40% in each game. And Colin Murray Boyles really had a great showing down there. Michi Johnson, Miles Studi, BJ Mack. We'll get into all of that with Collyn Taylor. All right, so before we go to commercial break, Joseph says, Keith, rank the teams from most hated to least hated with Tennessee, Clemson, Ohio State, and Georgia. All right, so for me, it's Clemson at 1A, Tennessee at 1B. I guess Georgia would have to be number 2, and then Ohio State. It's really kind of hard to hate them because they've never beaten South Carolina in football. And I was at 2 Outback Bowls and watched South Carolina really beat the brakes off of them, even though one of them got interesting after an injury. So, Joseph and everybody else, get your questions lined up for Collyn Taylor, who will join us after this.
If you enjoy listening and watching the Free Wednesday show, now live streaming on YouTube, and would love more Gamecock Pod daily, join our growing Gamecock family by becoming a monthly or annual subscriber. You'll be able to listen to the show every day of the week and listen to guests like J.C. Sherbert, Hale McGranahan, and John Whittle from thebigspur.com, Collyn Taylor and Mike Yuva from Gamecock Central, Emily Adams from the Greenville News, Ben Portnoy, Michael Lanana, and Jeremiah Holloway from GoGamecocks.com, Michael W. Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast, and many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join or listen to the weekly live Zoom call with up to 100 of your favorite Gamecocks and friends. After the show is an unrecorded overtime segment where the real scoop gets dropped and discussed. It's like going down to your local pub or sports bar and having a conversation with your Gamecock friends about last week's football game, men's and women's basketball games, and Gamecock baseball. And of course, there's always recruiting to discuss. In addition to the weekly Zoom call, VIP subscribers get the most popular podcast, The Morning After, which is released every Sunday morning during football season, and more VIP perks are in the works. Follow Keith on Twitter at KAllset, or follow the show on Twitter at GamecockPod. Go to the top of the homepage and follow the link. If all else fails, go to patreon.com/GamecockPodDaily. Join now and get up to 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. You will love it, guaranteed. Now, back to Gamecock Pod Live.
All right, we are back. And without further ado, let's add and bring in the hardest working man at GamecockCentral.com and resident Cub fan. I'm surprised he's not wearing a Chicago Cubs cap or jersey since they beat the Braves 2 out of 3.
I'm literally wearing my.
Oh, there it is, Wrigley. He's got it on.
Yeah, I got my.
I think after Max Fried's dominant performance to open that series, 3 hits and 8 strikeouts, no runs, no walks, I think the Braves they're just coasting. But, hey, credit to the Cubs. Dansby Swanson had some big hits, some big plays.
It's 16-5 in their last 21, and it's insane. It's been so weird because they've done this thing. I mean, even in the Braves series, they would fall behind, rally, take the lead, and the bullpen's been, elite the last 4 or 5 weeks. And so I don't know how they're doing it. Even last night, they fall down 2-0 to the Mets, score in each of the next 2 innings, and then hit a solo shot in the 8th, and then the bullpen shuts it down after that. So it's been nuts, and it's been surprisingly fun to watch. I bet it's been so much fun.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's kind of like the Braves before the All-Star break. They won like 11 straight series, and I think at one point 28 out of 31 games. You're just not going to stay that hot all year, and I think the Mets are now 21 games out of first. They're already having a fire sale up there, and the Phillies are over 10 games out of first. The Braves are just coasting. They have the best record in baseball, but last year Braves had 103 wins and got beat in the first round by a hot Phillies team, and so you want to be hot at the right time. And so speaking of hot, how's the weather in Columbia? Man, what a great segue by me there.
I will say it's not as bad as it has been. It's not good, but there was – my wife and I got back into town. We were at a wedding all weekend. We get back into town Monday, and I take a look at the feels like temp, and it's a crisp 111 with 65, 70% humidity. So it's brutal. I have a yard to cut tonight as the sun sets, so I'm already dreading that. I'm hydrating, but it's been sticky and hot for the better part of the last 2.5 weeks.
I don't feel sorry for you. I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I was umpiring baseball at Texas State, which, by the way, is the only other stadium outside of Williams-Brice Stadium where I've ever seen a caboose.
There you go.
They have one for VIPs on the first, right by the first base line in the home dugout. Real temperature was 111. On the turf, the temperature exceeded 130 degrees, and a kid that had to play 2 straight games in the heat of the day, his shoes actually started to melt on the bottom. That's how hot it was.
Yeah, that'll do it. I remember being it wasn't 111 or 130, but I remember being in Greenville, North Carolina for that regional in 2018. And it's a regular field, but kind of like they have turf by the dugouts, so they don't have to manicure it. And I was standing down there during a rain delay, kind of trying to figure out what was going on. And it had rained, so it was extra humid. And then it was about 95 degrees too. So it was especially brutal. And I was down there for 10 minutes and came back up with a different colored shirt on. It was just that sweat stained and hot.
Yeah. I mean, I've had several games where the heat index is like 116 or 118. And when you take your stuff off from behind the plate, it's as wet as if you were just taking it out of the washing machine.
Yeah. It sticks to you. It's just not fun.
Not fun. All right. So speaking of fun, birdies with Beamer.
Yes.
So how did you play, and who were you paired with?
So I was paired with Justin Stepp, Ben Portnoy of the State Newspaper, and then Kevin Hubbard, who's an analyst, who's going to be working with Sterling Lucas this year. We shot 1 under, which is not great, but it's better than some other teams did. Finished probably middle of the pack, and probably one of my better performances. I've done it 3 years in a row now. Probably one of my better birdies with Beamer performances I've turned in, which I was really, really impressed with.
All right. So how many of your shots did your team use throughout the round?
A fair amount. A couple drives. But a couple drives. I chipped really well, almost holed out 3 or 4 times. So I'll give myself some credit there. But we used a lot. We used a few of my drives and most of my short game around the green. So I'll take it on that one. Not a whole lot of iron shots getting used on my end of late, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's why I got a 7 wood in my bag. Hey, you drive for show, you putt for dough. That's what
Amen.
They say.
Amen.
All right, so what was the most interesting tidbits you picked up at the Birdies with Beamer event?
I talked a lot about hash marks with Dowell Loggins. That was probably one of the more interesting things. He went on like this 5-minute tangent about it, which I couldn't have asked for anything better, just because that's exactly what I wanted. So we talked a lot about when it's, the hash marks and the spacing. There's a story up on Gamecock Central about it, but he talked a lot about in the NFL, because of how close the hash marks are together, there's really not a field side and there's really not a boundary side. So there's not essentially a wide side and a short side of the field in the NFL the way it is in college. So when you come to the college game, you have so much space to the wide side of the field. You can really mess with formations, spacing, route concepts, more so than you can at the NFL level, where a lot of the time it's, he said defenses are typically just playing you to the strong side of the formation in the NFL and kind of straight up. Whereas now it's, in college, it changes a ton in how defenses play you with everything they're doing. So it gives you more chances to exploit mismatches, especially in space. I thought that was really interesting. Travian Robertson we were talking, and you ask about run defense, even though that's an entire defense thing, but everyone wants to pile it on the defensive line. And he said, really, it's just about block shedding. When you have bad run fits, I know that's a taboo word from the Will Muschamp days, but when you have bad run fits that typically means you're getting bounced out of gaps because you're not shedding blocks correctly. So if you violently shed, that tends to allow you to not arm tackle, which has been a big problem over the course of the time. So those are two really big things, and we've gotten to hear from coaches now a little bit more over the course of the last week or so, and we'll get to hear from a ton more, it feels like, over the course of the next week or two.
All right, so Dowell Loggins, he harped on that at his opening press conference, talking about, you want to get your players in space. You want to make teams have to defend just not the entire length of the field, but the entire width of the field, which is kind of the bear raid offense. Briles married with air raid, which he watched Kendall Briles run for 2 years. And that's the one thing, Captain Dumbass, that's our name on the show for the former guy. So please try to restrain from saying his actual name. I don't think we're going to see all 11 guys bunched up in the formations this year. What do you think?
No, I don't. And you'll still see some bunch formations, because a lot of times that's how you can exploit some mismatches. You can stack guys, but I think you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, one back, two tight ends, because that's kind of the strength of this team. And when you look at what the receiver room is with Juice, with Xavier Legette, those are two seasoned guys. But outside of that, Marion Brown's flashed here and there, but it hasn't really been consistent. Omega Blake, they need him to take a step forward, but he's inexperienced. Elijah Caldwell, Nick Harbor, both freshmen, so you have to temper expectations there. But you have two veteran tight ends in Trey Knox and Josh Scheinman, to where you can put those four guys as your skill guys with DeCarrion Joyner, DJ Braswell, Mario Anderson, Juju McDowell, and run a lot of 12 personnel and do a lot of different things with it. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think you'll see some spread formations. I think you'll still see some bunch concepts here or there, but this is such a athletic skill group when you consider what they have. And Spencer Rattler's shown he can really thrive when you spread it out and allow him to play that Big 12 style of football, where you're airing it out and you're rolling him out and giving him positions to really throw those deep balls. You almost have to tailor your offense to that. And if you can be efficient in the run game, I'm not saying you have to rush for, I'm not saying you have to have a 1,000-yard rusher, but if you can just be efficient in the run game, I think this offense has a chance to take a hefty step forward. I'm not calling them 2019 LSU, but I think it does have a chance to take a pretty hefty step forward.
Yeah, so I have nothing against bunch formations. I guess I should have clarified is bunching all 11 players in the box, right? Yes. Which brings all 11 defenders in the box. Skip Holtz, even Brian McClendon would run bunch formations, but they'd be split out wide to the wide side of the field. That opened up, your quick screen game. And then you could always fake and go that way and come back into the boundary with some linemen pulling. And so, I agree. I think that lineup with 12 personnel and you go tempo, you can change that to 13 or 14 personnel very easily, because Trey Knox was a wide receiver. He was one of the top wide receivers in the country. Justin Stepp signed him. I think he even said yesterday that was the biggest reason why he chose Arkansas. And Joshua Simon had South Carolina not signed this guy named Harbor, I think.
Yeah.
He was going to be with Justin Stepp's group in the spring. That's how athletic he is. And so just what a college defenses, from talking to a college offensive coordinator, it's all about matching your personnel grouping, right? When you're in 12, that's like a, run heavy, or if you're in two backs or whatever. But when you have the ability to go from 12 to 13 to 14 to empty without substituting and going tempo, you can really exploit mismatches. And I'm expecting a lot more tempo from Spencer Rattler, because let's face it, he thrived at Oklahoma in that. And, Dow Loggins at Arkansas, we saw a lot of tempo in that Bear Raid system.
Yeah, and when you think about it too, when was South Carolina's offense at its best last year? Is when they shrunk their personnel groupings, when they simplified and streamlined the offense and said, here's our base X number of plays. Let's go run it with a fifth of the personnel groupings that we had against Florida and against Missouri. And it allows Spencer Rattler to not think as much, because that was something you could see it at times where he kind of bogged down, might not be the right word, but kind of got thinking a little too much. And when you can let him go out there and play free, and Shane Beamer's talked about that helps. And tempo is a big thing with that. How you call plays is a big thing with that. How you signal in plays is a big thing with that. I mean, all of that goes into helping him just be confident and free. And if he can do those things, and if you can protect him, which is another big if right now, this offense, I mean, you have maybe a top 5 skill position room on paper in the SEC. You just got to protect Spencer Rattler and put those guys in advantageous spots, streamline wise, to get them where they need to be.
No doubt. So speaking of streamlined, I mean, yesterday you only heard from 3 offensive players, but in all the media availabilities, that has been a recurring theme about Dowell Loggins, meeting the players where they are, running the plays they like, simplifying the system, working with the offensive line to match the protections. I just think it's going to be a completely different feel from the last 2 years under a guy who had a cup of coffee in the NFL, who routinely had over 100 plays and 18 personnel groupings in the game plan every week, which paralyzed the players. I think that's going to be, completely different this season. What was your takeaway? To me, that was the biggest takeaway from yesterday's 3 players that met with the media.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where you even heard the assistant coaches talk about it, where Dowell Loggins comes in, and yes, there is going to be some new terminology. There's going to be things, he calls things different, but he's like, if this group of people do this well, why am I going to sit there and change the name of it, or change how we run it, or when we run it? Like, why wouldn't we keep that in there? And you hear it a lot with, Nick Saban. And I'm not comparing Shane Beamer and Nick Saban. But when Nick Saban, because you have so much coordinator turnover and staff turnover at Alabama, he makes the coordinators, they can call their own plays, they can call their offense, but he makes the coordinators learn Alabama's terminology. Because what's easier to learn? Is it easier for one guy to learn the same thing 85 guys know, or 85 guys to learn this one thing the one guy knows? So if you're Dowell Loggins, yeah, you keep a lot of the terminology the same because it's easier for your offensive guys to understand it. That's something that I think is really going to help them. I think that's something, when you talk about streamlining, keep it simple. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Fix the stuff that needs fixing. But, if South Carolina runs a certain play or a certain concept really, really well in this formation, don't try to tweak it in, take what you got and use that and then build around it. And I think that they're saying all the right things. I'll be interested to see what it looks like against another team once they actually go out there. But they're saying the right things, and like I said, this offense does have a chance to take a step forward if what they're saying does ultimately come true this season against high level competition.
All right, so the two major question marks on offense, everybody's made a big deal about running back and the lack of South Carolina's ability to land a proven running back in the transfer portal. But that man, Dakarian Joyner, said, hey, I'll take it on. I'll do it. He's gained almost 15 pounds of muscle. He looks like an SEC running back. And quite frankly, when they put him in the Wildcat against Tennessee and spread it out and let him run the football, he was like a running back taking a direct snap. What have you heard inside the building, and then your observations of Dakarian Joyner transitioning to running back, where I think that may have been his best position all along? Time will tell.
Yeah, I agree. Time will tell, but I mean, so far so good. The returns have been really impressive. Montario Hardesty, Dowell Loggins, all of the guys that have had to deal with him from a running back perspective have loved it so far. He's someone that understands how to play with the ball in his hands, but also understands how to play without the ball. He's incredibly smart, and understands his offense, understands what the defense is trying to do, and is athletic enough to make guys miss, and is powerful enough with the ball in his hands to fall forward, which South Carolina really hasn't had a ton of guys that can do that. So it's been met with a lot of really, really, really advantageous talk, and kind of like the offense as a whole. I'm excited to see what it looks like against another team. Now North Carolina's front isn't projected to be all that elite, but we'll see it against a different team. We'll see it, with that offensive line. And I think with his knowledge and just his veteran experience, that alone is reason enough to put him at starting running back and give you just a little bit of a wrinkle. I mean, he's not Dan Marino from an arm perspective, but I mean, he's shown the ability to pass. And if you're, Gene Chizik, if you're, Will Muschamp, if you're whoever they're going to have to face from a DC perspective, you have to respect that. You have to respect his ability to throw the ball, and that adds another layer of play calling and wrinkle that you can explore with it.
Well, I don't think Dakarian Joyner probably has the highest completion percentage of anybody that's ever started a game at quarterback inside Bank of America Stadium.
It's true.
Regardless of level. 9 for 9 in that game against the Baby Blues and a boat racing victory. And, hey, granted, it completely caught UNC's defense off guard, but he was just magnificent that day. So, I mean, to me, it's kind of too early to tell after him who are going to be the guys. Like, they're off today. I think full pads is tomorrow and Friday, and then scrimmage one, or maybe, I don't know if they were in full pads yesterday or not. I think it was shells.
Yeah, I think you have to wait till practice 6 to go full pads, and practice 6 will be tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are you hearing about the other guys? I mean, there's obviously Juju McDowell, but Mario Anderson by far has the most experience in college football, albeit at the Division II level. And then there's DJ Braswell, who's come in and is one of the fastest players on the team. So,
yeah.
I mean, how do you think it shakes out? And, what have you heard thus far?
Yeah, they like Mario Anderson. He's a daggum bowling ball. Like, he's one of those guys that the feet just keep moving. He runs behind his pads. I know that's a cliche, but there's some truth to it. And with DJ Braswell, he's kind of passed every test so far. He looked good in the summer. He's come in and done extra work to get acquainted with the system. He's done all of the things you want a freshman to do when they get on campus in May. He's done all that leading up to August. Now the big test it's not the first 5 practices. It's, okay, what happens when we put the pads on and you got Debo Williams and you're meeting Debo Williams or Pup Howard or Stone Blanton or Mo Kaba or whoever. You're meeting those dudes in the hole. How do you respond? How, when the bullets are flying, it's one thing in a classroom or at a whiteboard to say, if the defense is showing this, here's what I need to pick up in pass pro. It's another thing when the bullets are flying and people are moving around. It's another thing to be able to do it. So his big test, we'll know more about Braswell, I think, after the scrimmage, middle of next week too, once the pads have been on for a little bit more frequent time. That's him. Juju McDowell is kind of the wild card of this group because he's not necessarily a between the tackles, down in, down out guy, but he adds a level of speed and athleticism to this offense that you can really use. And so it's up to Dowell Loggins to kind of figure out how he wants to use him and what spots you want to use him. Can you split him out wide? Can you put him in motion and have him kind of just play around and just see where he fits best? But if I had to handicap it right now, just based on seniority, it'd probably go DeCarrion, Mario, Braswell, with McDowell just as a, special, not I say specialty, but like he's going to play a ton, but just kind of in that wild card role for you. So there's a lot of competition going on, and I think probably towards the middle of next week, we'll have a better idea of where that running back room stands after the scrimmage, after pads have been on, and you see how they hold up.
All right, so I think the same can be said for the offensive line, although I think there's a lot of weeping and wailing and hand-wringing and nail-biting going on over the offensive line. I mean, there are a number of very experienced players returning here. It was less than ideal to lose Jalen Nichols, but, Ja'Kai Moore has a dozen starts there. Jackson Hughes, he's got a bunch of starts there, transfer from Charlotte. Interesting battle at right tackle between Tyshawn Wanamaker, who I thought, quite frankly, Dylan Warnham was just so beat up with injuries. I thought Wanamaker was honestly better than him and played better than him. But now big Sidney Fugar, he is in the mix and could be just a huge road grader that could, help plow some space in on the right side of the line. What are your thoughts on the offensive line?
I feel a lot better about it now than I probably did 10 days ago. After seeing some of the combinations that they're going with in practice, after, talking to these guys about it, obviously Ja'Kai Moore, I think 4 of the 5 spots have kind of been settled, at least going into the opener. What that looks like in game 5 or 6 could be completely different, but 4 of your 5 spots are likely settled, with Ja'Kai Moore at left tackle, and then Gargiulo and Jones at your guard spot and Lee at center. And then it's just a battle between, Fugar and Wanamaker right now, more than likely at right tackle. And if you had told me Sidney Fugar, when he committed, he would be taking reps with the ones day one at right tackle, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But I think that's a testament to, South Carolina being down a couple bodies at tackle right now, and the development Fugar's made in his, short stint January to August. So he's someone that needed to get his body in better shape, really reshape that. And I think he has. And, we talk about wild cards. One of the guys that isn't 100% right now, and Casey Henry can also play that spot. And, Lonnie Teasley, I asked him at media day, I was like, how impactful can he be at tackle when it's healthy? And he goes, he could be a huge piece. I mean, they really loved him last year and what they saw from him, and you just got to get him healthy. I'm probably president of the Casey Henry fan club. I think he's got a chance to be really good. I love his body, how he moves. But if he can get healthy, which is step one, and then kind of knock that rust off, there's a chance there for him to push a Wanamaker or a Fugar for that right tackle spot too.
Yeah, and just build quality depth.
Yeah,
which is what you need. All right, so you spoke about Casey Henry, about the injury. Obviously, there are several guys who have been off to the side. What's the update on the health of the team overall? Like, for me, is Jordan Strong, is he 100%? Mokaba, they got injured both in the first half of the Arkansas game. They're less than a year removed from ACL surgery. What about those guys and some of the other guys that have been missing practice? What's the latest on the injury front?
Yeah, in what we saw or have seen from practice, Strong's really not missed any part of it. Now, we haven't seen a ton of 11 on 11, obviously, but he's been doing all the individual work. It's a pretty significant knee brace that he's wearing on his surgically repaired knee, but I haven't seen him really take any reps off or sit out any drills that they've been doing. Mokaba probably a little bit more limited than Strawn is, but in talking to Clayton White, he's like, I'm not gonna put him out there mentally, just from a mental standpoint, until he feels like he's ready to go. And that could be doing some drills, and if the knee doesn't feel as right as it maybe could, okay, take a break, get some treatment, figure it out, and then we'll see what happens. So I think he might, just gut feels probably a little bit behind, but I don't think there's anything long term for South Carolina. As it stands, they don't practice till about 2:30 today, I believe, or they're off today. As of 1:48 Eastern on August 9th, I don't think there's anything overly serious to concern yourself with injury-wise. Probably some guys tweak hamstrings, soft tissue stuff here or there. With it being 700 degrees outside, who knows? But nothing I would think long-term.
All right, so let's switch to defense. And before I ask you Joseph's question, I've been asking all my guests this: fair or unfair, Clayton White is on the hot seat this season?
I think a little unfair right now, but we can revisit it in by game 6 or 7 and see where it stands. Just because I think they've done so well. Part of it's luck. Turnovers are always luck in some regard, but they've done so well forcing turnovers. I think he's maximized certain positions. Listen, he got somewhat quality play out of Sherrod Green and Brad Johnson, who struggled for consistency over the course of their careers. And he's helped restock that linebacker room. Obviously Pup Howard, a big piece of that. And now it's about taking the next step. Okay, you've shown some progress, but can you improve the run defense? Can you get these freshmen that are going to have to play a ton in the secondary? Can you get them ready to go? And Torian Gray's had a tremendous track record of doing that. Can you get them ready to go? Can you get this team more consistent tackling on the edge? There's a lot of things that they have to improve, but I think they've restocked in ways that I think they've needed to restock. Now you got to stay healthy and develop these guys and get them to a spot where they can play. But I think he's done a good enough job so far, and this is a pretty big year for him to take another step for his career and for South Carolina.
All right, so I'm going to tell you one number that's got to come down, and that is 198, which was average yards rushing allowed last season. All right, and so let's talk about that. So Travian Robertson comes in, replaces Jimmy Lindsey. He's got a pretty talented and deep group. What have you heard about his impact? And, you know, guys like Tonka Hemingway, Boogie Huntley, TJ Sanders, Nick Barrett, Elijah Davis, even Jamal Weish. I mean, that's a pretty deep group there.
Yeah, he likes what they got, and he's even gushed about how good they've been just from a work ethic standpoint. They're really working hard, and there's some untapped talent there. When you talk about Boogie Huntley being a blue chipper, I believe Tonka's lived up to it certainly, but he was a blue chipper. Xavier McLeod, obviously a blue chipper. I'm going through that list. You know, Nick Barrett. I think Nick Barrett has a chance to be really good this year as a run stuffer. There's talent in that room. You know, obviously Boogie and Tonka are the presumed starters there, but then I think you look at Nick Barrett and TJ Sanders as the next two guys after that, and then McLeod and you know Davis after that. So they have some pieces, and Travian Robertson, that dude does not shut up in practice. Talking to him, and he's energetic, and he gets in the drills. He's like hitting the sled with them. There's a lot of energy in that room, and I think that's really good for that unit. And he's been there, he's done that literally at the school that he's coaching right now. So I think he's going to be really good for that room, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they develop because there is a lot of untapped potential there.
So he kind of coaches like his coach.
Yeah. Yes. There's a lot to it there. A lot to it.
All right. So Joseph wants to know, Collyn, who do you think is a breakout candidate for defense this season?
Nick Barrett. I really think I think Nick Barrett, from a returner perspective, I mean, 6'3", 327. They haven't really had a guy like that from a run stuffing perspective in a very long time. And he's big and moves well. I think if you look up and South Carolina has improved in run defense, it's because Nick Barrett's having a really good year for you. I think that's one guy. I think from a defensive backfield standpoint, I think Jelon Kilgore has a really big chance to have a breakout year, you know, obviously playing behind DQ Smith and Nicky Manwari at safety. But if you move DQ Smith to nickel and use him there, then Jelon Kilgore has a chance to be your starting safety. He's long, athletic, a top 200 guy in the on-3 rankings, top 300 guy in the consensus, the industry rankings. So him, I mean, there's a ton. Vakari Swain has a chance to have a potential breakout year as a freshman. They have a lot of young talent. And then, you know, who knows with Keenan Nelson, what that might look like for him, a guy that got his feet wet last year. So if I had to guess from a newcomer perspective, I'd say Kilgore. And from a returner perspective, I'd probably go Barrett as your two leading candidates.
All right. So Stone Blanton, he spoke at the media day. You can tell his face. He's leaner. He's dropped a lot of body fat, reshaped his body, gotten quicker. But he's been battling an injury. And so my guy for impact newcomer, Pup Howard, does this open the door for him to potentially be a game one starter if Stone Blanton doesn't get back quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Mo Kaba, we don't know what his status is going to be. You'd like to think he's available for game one, but you don't know if he's going to be on a snap count or what. So I would have said, even if Kaba and Stone are healthy, like a dude with Pup size is going to be in competition to start regardless, just how big he is. And, you know, physically speaking, he's there. Like physically speaking, he's exactly what you want him to be. Now it's about just getting him more acclimated. You know, again, when the bullets are flying, when the pads are popping, can he hold his own? And yeah, I think if you look up and there are 3, freshmen or 3 newcomers on your starting defensive 11, I wouldn't be shocked. When you talk about Pup, when you talk about potentially Kilgore, when you talk about JT Gear as a newcomer guy, would not shock me one bit if you had those 3 newcomers with 2 of those dudes being freshmen.
I absolutely agree. So you do return a healthy David Spalding, hopefully at nickel. To me, you can mix and match. They cross-train. It does appear, Marcellus Dial and O'Donnell Fortune at corner, David Spalding at nickel, Nick Emanwari and DQ Smith, who are 2 guys who came out of nowhere, Emanwari, freshman All-American, DQ Smith, All-SEC freshman, just like Emanwari. But if you move DQ Smith back to nickel, where he played about 8 games last year, and Kilgore, that's like bringing an extra linebacker into the game because, that guy's 6'1", almost 220 pounds.
Yeah, he's real deal. And he's someone that was there in the spring, kind of got his feet under him, and you can make the case he's learning from, if not the best, a top 5 defensive backs coach in the country in Torian Gray, who's, Torian Gray took Darius Rush and turned him into a 4th round draft pick or 5th round draft pick, wherever Darius went. He took Carlin Platel, and who, shout out to Mike Uva, came from Assumption and played really well for you down the stretch in that 2021 season. DQ Smith was running high school quarterback the year before he got to South Carolina, and is your starting safety by game 4 or 5 last year. Like there's a track record of him taking guys who have the talent and just needs to put it all together and doing it really early in the process. And Kilgore's already incredibly athletic, incredibly talented. You don't become a 4-star guy without that. And you pair him with Torian Gray. There's a legitimate chance that he could, if he's not starting, be playing significant snaps for you, depending on where you want to play DQ Smith in certain situations.
So everybody's talking about Bakari Swain and Jalen Kilgore, and rightfully so, but I think there's another true freshman, Judge Collier, who was a guy. He didn't play at South Point. He didn't play at Northwestern, played at a charter school. He came in January. This guy's been turning heads, and so there's a lot of young talent along with Emory Floyd, Kawan Banks, Peyton Williams, who's been injured. But Torian Gray has really built up the talent in that room.
Yeah, and it's funny, you sit there, and I remember when they were building the 21 and 22 classes, or 22 and 23 classes, everyone's like, why the hell are they taking so many defensive backs? They're just stacking these classes with defensive backs. This is why, because you knew you were, probably going to lose after that 2022 season, RJ Roderick, who obviously transferred in the middle of the year for eligibility reasons. You knew you were going to lose Cam Smith. You knew you were going to lose Darius Rush. You knew you were going to have a ton of these positions and who knows with Marcellus Dial what they thought when they brought him in. Obviously used the COVID year, but they knew they were going to have to replace a ton of production. And this is why they restocked it, because now you look at it and you say, we have, 5 or 6 freshmen, sophomores, redshirt freshmen that have a legit shot at competing for playing time. And that's a testament to recruiting and recruiting the right guys. But I can't say enough good things about Torian Gray as a recruiter and as a developer. I think everyone wants to talk about recruiting, but he recruits because he develops. All he has to do is just draw a circle around all the guys he's helped develop in the NFL and in college, and that recruits itself. So there's a lot of promise and talent in this DB room. Now it's just about putting it all together and gaining some experience because these guys just haven't played a ton of snaps. Even O'Donnell Fortune, he's in his 17th year at South Carolina, it feels like, and he's only played 300 snaps. So you just got to get him more experienced. And if you do that, I don't know if it's going to be as great of a secondary as last year off the bat, but you have a chance to develop into a really healthy unit back there.
You two guys were in astronomy lab together as true freshmen.
Yeah, about to say, I think we lived on the same floor. We were in the same orientation class. It just feels like OD's been there and it's kind of the running joke. Like every offseason's Xavier Legette's best offseason. Every offseason's O'Donnell Fortune's best offseason. And these guys are finally seeming to starting to click. Xavier Legette feels like he's been here 14 years too. I mean, so those are two guys. They need to play well, and it looks like they're finally turning a corner.
I think Xavier Legette and Jordan Strong lived on the 6th floor of LaBorde when I was in school at South Carolina. So
yeah, they're going to be Dr. Legette and Dr. Strong by the end of this.
Right. So, hey, have you got a few minutes to talk men's basketball?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Gamecocks go to the Bahamas, which I've been there. Great place to be in the summertime. But great for this team that has a lot of newcomers, a lot of transfers. I think at this point it's safe to say at least, there one impact true freshman, Collyn Murray-Boyles. And clearly they did not play the Lithuanian national team nor the national team from Argentina. They did play 2 club teams. They did have 2 convincing wins. And so what are the biggest takeaways, and how should Gamecock fans feel after this trip about the potential for this team coming up in year 2 of the Lamont Paris era?
This team's going to be really, really good shooting the ball. This team can flat out shoot it. And that was something Lamont Paris and this staff really emphasized in the portal. You go out and get Miles Studi, who was one of the best 3-point shooters in the country for the first part of last season. Michi Johnson's shown the ability to shoot. BJ Mack's shown the ability to shoot. You go out there and you shoot 47% from the field. You shoot 42.9% from 3. You go 13 of 17 from the line. You assist on 46 of your 73 makes. There's a lot to like there. They're not playing, the Boston Celtics. They're not playing. That's fair to say, but if they go out there and they don't shoot the ball well, if they go out there and don't assist and move and do all this stuff, then it starts to be like, okay, well, what's going on? But they go out there, they do what they're supposed to do. They showcase, the feedback from summer workouts has always been, this is a team that has a chance to really take a step forward offensively. I'm still kind of in wait and see mode defensively about what this team can be. But, when you talk about the pieces they brought in, Michi Johnson and Jacoby Wright getting better in year 2, Zach Davis, who we talk about breakout candidates, big one right there. There's a lot to like here about what South Carolina has in its backcourt, in its wing situation. I'll be interested to see what the front court looks like once the season starts and you start to get into practice. But I think you have the guards and I think you have the wings to compete, bottom line compete in the SEC a lot better than you did last year.
All right, so how many spots do you think are coming together in that starting 5? Because to me, and look, there's still, Ebo Abrima-Deba, he's coming off that Achilles injury. Update us on his progress. I know he's not up to 5-on-5, but I think you got to be really careful bringing that guy along kind of the same way, with a Mo Kaba or Jordan Strong. But how is he doing? And how could he be a potential X factor for this team?
Yeah. So he's obviously not in 5-on-5, not in full contact stuff just yet, but doing a lot of the individual work. He's able to run some dummy offense, and he's in uniform at times. Like, he's doing things on the basketball court. He's running and doing a little bit of cutting, and there's a lot of good progress being made. Obviously, the Achilles, it's not an ACL, it's not anything like that. It's a lot tougher to come back from, and the variance on what you are coming back from an Achilles is a lot different. Not everyone's Kevin Durant, where you come back and all of a sudden you're back to being the best player in the world at times. So, yeah, we'll see. He's still going to knock the rust off. But, you're bringing in a guy who's 6'6", 6'5", over 200 pounds. Not the most efficient shooter, but can really assist, can really get downhill, can get to the line. He adds another dynamic to where you can play him, because I think they're going to play a lot of small ball this year, just because you just don't have the bodies in the front court the way you maybe want to. He could play probably anywhere from the 1, where he played at Coastal at times, to the 4, depending on what the lineup you have out there. So a really, really interesting piece if he can get back to what he was before that injury, which is early returns have been good, but you just never know with something like that.
All right. So for me, based off this trip, based off feedback, I mean, is it safe to say that Collyn Cooper, Meechie Johnson, Miles Studi, and BJ Mack, those 4 guys are probably ingrained in the starting lineup, which then is it Josh Gray, Stephen Clark, or Collyn Murray-Boyles, who had himself quite a game in the second game, 7 for 7 from the field, and made one really high-level play that you saw off the video, from catching the ball with his back to the basket in the corner and making a swing through move and one power dribble, and then just exploding to the basket, dunking, making threes. Really changed his body. I mean, what are your thoughts about him? And you really didn't see a whole lot of Josh Gray on the floor with this team. It was Clark, Murray-Boyles, and Mack.
Yeah. I think Josh Gray's going to have a role. I think those 4 are set. I think it's Collyn, Meechie, Studi, and then BJ Mack, because you're 4 that's going to start the season in your starting lineup. And right now, I think if they had to play a game tomorrow, it would be Stephen Clark as your starting center. They like his athleticism. He's protecting the rim at a pretty good clip in summer workouts. He's shown the ability to rebound. Granted, they didn't miss a lot of shots there in the Bahamas, so it's hard to really get a sense of it. But, I'm looking at it now. He averaged 7 points and 6 rebounds, or 7 points and 7.5 rebounds. I think you take that from Stephen Clark, shooting 43-ish% from the field. I mean, I think if you told South Carolina that's what he'd give you in the SEC play, I think they'd take it. So that's that. I think Gray's going to have a role. Just needs to refine some things here or there with his game, be more efficient on non-dunks, not turn the ball over a ton, get to the free throw line, make your free throws. And then you're probably talking about Collyn Murray-Boyles in that mix. They're not going to be a big team this year. I think they're going to have, Stephen Clark and Josh Gray, I don't think they'll share the floor together a ton. I think you'll see either one of them, and then your next tallest guy after that's BJ Mack at 6'8". You just don't have a lot of height on this team. And so I will be very interested to see how it shakes out. And with Collyn Murray-Boyles, man, I ran into a staff member on a recruiting event, and we were talking, and he was like, listen, we brought him in because we saw the finesse, we saw the skill, we saw all of that stuff. He goes, what we didn't see, because he still had to cut weight, we didn't see the athleticism. And when you see that as he got dropped 25 pounds, like that's that comes out and he's dunking. And I mean, we watched open practice and he's blowing past people on the way to the rim to dunk. And he's putting the ball on the floor. His IQ is really, really, really good. He's still 18. I will caution people that, he's still 18. So there's going to be growing pains. He's going to be going up against Trey Mitchell, and all of these dudes have been in college weight rooms and programs for 3-4 years. So there will be growing pains, but if he sticks it out and continues to develop the way he's developed in a short period of time, dating back to last year, it's going to be really hard to keep him off the floor for double-digit 15 to even 20 minutes a game if he continues to play like he has been.
All right, so big question about BJ Mack. So, look, a lot of schools wanted him, big-time programs. He chose South Carolina. But is he physically athletic enough to be a legitimate low-post threat in the Southeastern Conference? How does he stack up athletically? We know he's got a big body. We know he's got a great skill set. But is he more of a face-up guy than a guy that can pound it even though he's 6'8", 250 plus?
I think he's more of a face-up guy. I think he's more of a space the floor, than the traditional back to the basket, back you down, get rebounds, do all that. He's certainly done that at times during his career at Wofford, but I don't think South Carolina is going to be asking him to go down there and bang with Trey Mitchell, to bang with all these really high-level bigs. It's going to be a lot of spacing the floor. It's going to be a lot of, hey, if you're on the weak side, then you crash the boards, then you go in there to see if you can't get a putback. But when you're on the strong side of the floor and the ball is close to you, we want you playing in that, mid-range to 3 area to where you can kind of create. And he's a really good passer. I've heard a lot of good things about his ability to pass. This will be a really good – Stephen Clark's a good passer. Collyn Murray-Bowles is a good passer. BJ Mack is. Do that. Pass the ball. Be able to shoot threes, space the floor, and give Talon Cooper, give Michi Johnson, Miles Studi more opportunity because we've spaced the floor to attack and get to the rim and do those things and help there. So he'll be a good offensive weapon, needs to continue to improve defensively. Obviously, I think the entire team does, but will be a really impactful piece, more so if I had to guess right now, a space the floor guy more than your traditional rebound, crash the boards, get in there and bang around kind of big.
All right, so we've just gone under 48 hours until Cam Scott makes his announcement at 2 p.m. Eastern on Friday at Lexington High School. Collyn, 48 hours away, based off how long the ceremony is before he actually makes the announcement. How do you handicap this thing coming down the home stretch? And how big would it be for Lamont Paris if he can convince this guy to stay home? And then, what's the flip side of the coin?
Yeah. It's been a tough one to handicap. There's not a lot of info bouncing around about it. What I will say is South Carolina, as of last week, felt really good where they stood in the relationship that they built. It doesn't mean that they're going to land him. That doesn't mean they're not going to land him. But South Carolina feels really comfortable with the job they have done and they are doing to recruit him. Alabama is out there, and Alabama's been the best team in the SEC for the last 2 or 3 years. Another school, Texas, he was a heavy Texas lean before all the Chris Beard stuff. And we'll see what happens there. A lot of that support staff at Texas is the same support staff that recruited him before all the Beard stuff. So I think it's those 3 at or near the top right now. And so it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see how it comes down. But if you're South Carolina, it'd be huge to get a top 50 prospect in every single ranking, a top 30 guy in the industry ranking, an instant impact freshman for your program to pair with some pretty interesting pieces with Oku Federico, with Morris Ugasuk, with what you're expected to have on this 2024 roster next season would be absolutely huge to add a guy like Cam Scott into the mix, one of the fastest risers over the course of the summer. On the flip side, if you don't get him, it'd be tough. That was one of your priority guys. If you don't get him, it'd be one thing to lose him to a school that, when Tennessee was back on the up and up, and they weren't going to Sweet 16s all the time, to lose him to a school like that. But you got to understand Alabama and Texas and what they are, and they're not blue bloods, but they've been a top 15 programs in the sport the last 4 or 5 years. So then you turn your attention to either the portal, or you turn your attention to Elijah Crawford, KJ Green, Bishop Boswell, some of these guards that they started to show some interest in over the course of the last few weeks and since Lamont Paris took over.
All right, so if you were making an on-3 prediction model pick today, I'm putting you on the spot. You're for, I don't want you to pass, but I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable.
My confidence level would not be high if we're doing confidence levels, but I'd slot it for Texas right now. But there's just enough there to make me think South Carolina has more than a puncher's chance. But if I had to pick right now, I think I'd probably go Texas.
All right. Interesting stuff. So, hey, were you a fan of the series Justified?
I have not watched it yet. I need to. That's been on the list, and I've told myself to watch it, but in this business, you hardly get a whole ton of time to sit down and watch TV. And the Cubs have kind of kept me busy the last few weeks too.
All right, so I didn't even realize Harlan, Kentucky was a real town, but evidently it is, because South Carolina offered this 6'6" or 6'7" sharpshooter out of there. I mean, is he a potential guy to watch? And going back to some of those other names, how much of a linchpin could Cam Scott be for this recruiting class to get him in the boat in August ahead of the November signing day?
Yeah, would be huge. Trent Noah. I hate his name because it sounds like it should be Noah Trent, but it is Trent Noah, and that's confused the ever-loving you-know-what out of me. Really, really fast riser over the course of the summer. Skilled guy, kind of your Lamont Paris type. He loves shooting. He loves skill. He loves basketball IQ, and he's kind of got all of that. And you get him on campus, you get him in a weight room, and that should help him. But they'll host him on an official in September, Mississippi State weekend. And if you have a guy like Cam Scott in the boat, it's okay, well, now you got Elijah Crawford coming in on a visit in a couple weeks. You have whatever else they want to set up over the course of that time. And now, Trent Noah, I even had to go look at his name again because I almost forgot. But, it's easy to sell, hey, listen, yes, we're losing, potentially, 4 starters, whether, depending on what, you're losing Talon Cooper, you're losing BJ Mack, you're losing Stephen Clark. And depending on what the other guys want to do, you could be losing a ton of production. But hey, listen, we have some young pieces there. We have a top 50 prospect, a top 30 prospect in this class too. Come and play with him, and it's a chance to really have a good young core if you're Lamont Paris with some talent to go along with it.
All right. Well, it sounds like Wrigley needs to go out from the scratching. So, hey, Collyn, can't thank you enough. Great as always. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Tell us what you've got coming up on GamecockCentral.com.
Football, and more football. We'll be sifting through media day quotes and notes and all that fun stuff, but tracking Cam Scott, tracking hoops recruiting is kind of, you start this official visit season that'll crank up in a couple weeks, and then kind of previewing baseball. It never stops there either, and fall ball starts in about a month. So now it's just trying to figure out who's going to stand out, what the position battles look like, and all the fun stuff there. So never a dull moment over at Gamecock Central.
All right, Collyn. Thanks again. Have a great rest of the week. Stay hydrated. Stay cool, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Absolutely.
All right, that was Collyn Taylor from GamecockCentral.com, Texas. A very interesting pick. A lot of people think it's been Alabama and South Carolina, but my guy, Rodney Terry, he's going to be a force at Texas. Book it. Mark it down. I mean, if their big man hadn't have been injured in the NCAA tournament, they probably were going to the Final Four and could have possibly won it all. So we shall see. Less than 48 hours, we should have a decision on Cam Scott. All right, so that's going to be a wrap for today on Gamecock Pod Live. Thanks to everybody who participated and tuned in live and is listening when they get home from work or working out, or sometimes I like to put every night I put my earbuds on and put a podcast on and listen as I drift off to sleep or first thing in the morning. So you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday. And for the patrons, I'll be back tomorrow and Friday, and we'll be chopping it up, talking about Gamecock football, recruiting, still somewhat on the forefront. So until tomorrow, this is Keith Alsep saying, go Gamecocks, God bless America, and God protect our troops. I'm out of here.